Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Ant on Music. I, of course, am your humble host, Ant. If you haven't watched all four of the videos from Record Store Day, go back after this one and check those out. Huge haul for Record Store Day this year. For those of you that did check it out and check out my videos week in, week out, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. You may well notice we're not in our usual setting, not down in my cave, my man cave, so to speak, my music room. Decided to mix it up a little bit. So this week we're in my kitchen, all right? And we're going to take a look at like a genre of music, I guess you could say. And it's funny because sometimes I prep for shows and other times I wing it, and I'm pretty sure you could tell when. Sometimes things just happen to fall into your lap. So prior to Record Store Day, there were there was a release or two that came out that just predated Record Store Day, and I didn't do a video on them. Why? Because I knew that Record Store Day, I didn't want to include them with that because it's its own thing. Record Store Day is it's Record Store Day. It is what it is. So I figured, all right, I'll hold them. So I started thinking, things formulate in my aging brain, and I was like, all right, I think I know what we're doing. And then I woke up today on 4/20, and it hit me just like a lightning bolt, or maybe a cloud. Let's take a look at bands that are like jam bands. Kind of makes sense for the day, 4/20, right? So I went into my closet, my vault of hundreds of t-shirts and tour shirts, and I grabbed this one. All right, this is the Horde tour, and this was a tour that was similar in a lot of ways to Lollapalooza, but it dealt with jam bands. Okay, and the reason I got onto this was simple, because one of the new releases that I got was jam bands. So you might be saying, well, who was the original jam band? Well, to me, the original jam bands, they were kind of all over the place. You had San Francisco, right? And of course you had the Grateful Dead, all right? Grateful Dead were probably the original jam band, very psychedelic in nature. Basically lots of people tripping on acid seeing the Dead. This is a great live compilation from the Dead. They put out two of these, Live from the Vault, one from the Vault and two from the Vault. This is two from the Vault. And, the Dead is where it basically all begins. This set here, it's a really well put together set as far as what they included in here. And it's literally 9 songs on 8 sides of vinyl. So basically, it's a song per side with the exception of side B. It starts off with a nearly 16-minute vision of Good Morning Little Schoolgirl. You got their classic Dark Star with St. Stephen. Side C, the 11, Death Don't Have No Mercy. That's it for the other one. New Potato Caboose, Turn On Your Love Light, and Walk Me Out in the Morning Dew. So, and this is for me where jam bands start. I don't know about you, but that's to me is ground zero. Then from there you have the Allman Brothers. The Allman Brothers, coming out of Florida and the Southeast, and where the Dead were psychedelic in nature, and like I said, a lot of people doing LSD experiments and stuff like that. The Allman Brothers were a different vibe. They were almost jazzy in nature in a lot of aspects, where Dead, psychedelic, folky, along those lines. The Allman Brothers, same thing in a way, where you had these really elongated songs that were really stretched out in the live format. They definitely came with a different approach than the Grateful Dead did. Luckily, as you can see from the shirt, I got to see the Allman Brothers for the first time. Was on the Horde tour back in '94, which was the brainchild of John Popper and Blues Traveler. And the cool thing about seeing the Allman Brothers, it was also the first time that I got to see the Black Crowes. The Black Crowes came up on stage during the Allman Brothers set, and they did a couple of numbers with them. and it was pretty neat. That was my first chance of seeing the Black Crowes live, which if you watch my videos week in, week out, you hear me talk about the Crowes frequently. I do love the Black Crowes. So with the Horde tour, all right, you had all these jam bands, and it's kind of funny because the jam band scene in the early to mid 90s, in a lot of ways centered around New York. And the thing is this, having grown up here in New York, you didn't think in terms of these jam bands. You know, it's like, it was very grassroots. You had these groups that were from, like, you know, they came in from Jersey, they came out from Pennsylvania, out from Long Island. They kind of, you know, did a lot of the downtown scene down in the Village and all these smaller clubs, and they, you know, got mainstream. Like I said, the big ones, you know, the biggest one at the time probably was Blues Traveler. And Blues Traveler actually celebrated the 30th anniversary of this album, and that was the album that was toured on this tour. And this album is phenomenal. This is a anniversary edition. So on the back there, you see the track listing. There's the front cover, pretty much the same thing. And as far as the innards go, we have our photo, we have some liner notes, lyrics as well, and have it on 2 slabs of vinyl. And we'll take a look at the vinyl. It's a beautiful purple vinyl. Check that out. This was, I believe I picked this up from Experience Vinyl. And then not only, aside from this, they also have one in blue. All right, I obviously got the purple one. Didn't get the blue one. I don't need to have 2 copies of this on vinyl. And this album was a monster. This really, it blew up the jam band scene. I mean, you had lots of other bands too. You had Widespread Panic. You had Big Head Todd and the Monsters. Just so many of these bands that came through at this time. This album was just phenomenal. It actually was probably had at the time some of the biggest singles for bands that came out of the scene. You had Run Around, also Stand is on here, Look Around, Fallible, which I love, Mountain Winds again, another fantastic song, Freedom, Crash, Burn, Price to Pay, and of course Hook with the great video that basically has it as if it's a Wizard of Oz scene. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Just Wait, and Brother John. So if you've never heard this album, you must have been living under a rock. And one of the other bands that came out with that scene, they've actually just released a new album, and that's what got me going in this vein with thinking about doing jam bands on 420. And that was a band that definitely had their ups and downs over the past 30 years, and they've just released a new album. And I'm talking about another New York-based band, the Spin Doctors, and this one's called Face Full of Cake. Pretty much most of the original band, 3/4 of the original band, still present. And this album is fun. You know, that's another thing. When you talk about, you know, the older bands like Allmans and The Dead, it was definitely, you know, not rigid. I mean, they're jam bands, but as far as like lyrical content, the band's really got looser with lyrical content, much more about fun, especially the Spin Doctors. The Spin Doctors always sound like they're having a good time lyrically. Chris Barron does a great job with the lyrics. So this is the insert on that album. Lyrics and liner notes, of course, and this is a very bright Arctic white piece of vinyl here. All right. Got this directly from the band, and it's got some great tracks on it. You know, it's not, you know, there's no Two Princes on this. There's no Jimmy Olsen blues. But is it bad? No, it's actually quite good. You know, for a band that's been around this long, is still producing music this way and having a good time doing it, can't really be beat. So on this album, you have Boombox, which first time I listened to, I was kind of like, oh, okay, it's all right. Then you have Rock and Roll Heaven, which I absolutely love. That's a great homage to all the music that's come before them. You know, Buddy Holly, things like that. And it's just them lyrically having fun with the idea of rock and roll heaven. Still a Gorilla. That's a good track. A lot of wordplay. You always get a lot of wordplay with the Spin Doctors. Heart of the Highway, Double Parked is very cool. And then of course, you know you're dealing with the Doctors when you get a tune that's entitled "I Liked You Better When Your Butt Was Big." Okay, Boot on the Lawn's a great tribute in a way to everyone who has a funky dad out there with what they put out in the yard for the neighbors to enjoy. She Don't Love Me Anymore. I'm the Man You Got. While You're Holding the Moon Over Me. She Stands Alone. And When You Got Turmoil in Your Mind. So a very cool album from the Spin Doctors. If you dig the Doctors, definitely check this out. If you're unfamiliar with them, this might not be such a bad place to start. I would probably suggest going back to the Spin Doctors album that got them famous with Jimmy Olsen Blues and the other tracks that came out of there. And it's funny because I recently saw an interview with Chris Barron of the Spin Doctors, and he was talking about the lyrics behind Two Princes. And basically, and I was kind of surprised because I always thought it was like a competition of guy versus guy over a girl's love. And what it was he wrote it about their competition with their record label with Pearl Jam. So Pearl Jam and them were both on Epic at the time. And basically, Chris couldn't get over the fact that they were really back in Pearl Jam. And, he wrote the song Two Princes, which I found very, very interesting. So you have that. Another one of the bands that I saw on the Horde tour back in '94, they were on the second stage. They didn't even make the T-shirt. It's like they were kind of like an afterthought. And they had put out an independent album. They had just put out, I think, their first major. And I've always wondered what happened to those guys. They were excellent. They were on the second stage, and me and my buddy Neil Boyle, rest in peace, Neil. We're going back and forth between the main stage and the second stage. And the second stage where we saw them was Jones Beach. So the second stage was basically a parking lot, like a side parking lot, where all the tour buses would park, and they had a smaller stage set up there. And we went in, or I should say over, because it's an outdoor venue. And I'd known about this band, and it's like, oh, let's go check them out. And the lead singer was, really, really cool. Between songs, he was chatting with people close to the stage and just kind of laughing and having a good time. And they were definitely in that jam band, feel. They definitely had that about them. I always wonder what happened to them. Talking about Dave Matthews Band, it's like I couldn't believe that I saw Dave Matthews Band way back when they first released Under the Table and Dreaming. This is another one of their albums. I just pulled this one out because I love the album cover. Tribute to their fallen member, Leroy Moore. And so they actually, from there, they really exploded. They're definitely the biggest of the jam band scene from the early to mid 90s. So where does this stuff go? You've got like the classic acts, right? You've got the acts like, although the Dead are gone, you still have splinter acts out there touring. You also, same thing with the Allman Brothers. You still have, the Brothers touring, and of course you got the Black Crowes. Black Crowes is still out there doing their thing. They're blues-based jam band stuff. And now you got, Spin Doctors still around, Dave Matthews still around. But where is it going? What's the next generation? Like the 60s, you had the Dead. The 70s, you had the Allmans and others. The 80s, you had bands like that. And then you had like Fish came about. And then you also had them in the 90s as well as the Black Crowes and all the bands I just mentioned. But where's it going? It's like, well, you kind of got to return. And a return to a little bit more of the psychedelic, the freak out stuff. And that is King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Now, this one, I had ordered this several months ago. I forgot where I ordered it from. And they just sold out of that variation of it. Now, this is Nonagon Infinity, which is a great album, but this is live, recorded while they were on tour. And these guys are just straight up having a blast. So take a look at the inside of that. and it's recorded all over the world on the Nonagon Infinity Live Tour. And, you know, it's just definitely more on the psychedelic end of things as opposed to the stuff that's been, you know, that came out of New York. These guys are out of Australia. I got turned on to them about a year or so ago, and I've been digging through their stuff, and I've mentioned them before on the show. And the cool thing about this release, which I was happy that it finally came out, and this is the reason why I wanted it, not only for the music, which is phenomenal, but also for this. It's 2 slabs of vinyl. And just check out the shape on that. Isn't that funky, man? Isn't that cool? So you have that. And, you know, this is kind of where the jam band music is at. Can't even say where it's headed. It's where it's at. These guys have released well over, you know, 12.5 albums. And they're very prolific. They release stuff at a lightning pace. And they have a new one coming out in June. And I'll definitely be showcasing that when the time comes. So that is everything I have to show you on this special 420 edition of Ant on Music. I appreciate you guys coming here, checking out the channel. Please drop me a comment, you know, give a thumbs up, share it across other platforms with people that you think might dig it. Come back next week, you know, see what we got going on next week. There's always something new coming out. I don't like to say what I'm going to be doing in case stuff doesn't show up or I'm not able to get a copy of what I'm looking for, but got ideas. So that's that. So as usual, as I say to everyone, peace, one love, music, and I'm out.